Item: SCP-1421. Code name: The Unreliable Oracle. Object Class: Euclid. Special Containment Procedures: SCP-1421 is to be contained on site within the Braden Forest Nature Reserve. To avoid interaction with members of the public, a fenced exclusion zone with a diameter of 100 meters is to be maintained by embedded personnel within the local wildlife trust and nature trail paths redirected. Acorns dispersed by SCP-1421 are to be collected and kept in secure storage at Sector 25. Under no circumstances are personnel to interact with SCP-1421-1 unless authorized to do so by Professor Reed's Dr. Skinner. Description: SCP-1421 is a single specimen of Quercus robber English oak, located within Braden Forest, Wiltshire, England. It is situated at the center of a natural clearing approximately 20 meters in diameter. Adjacent vegetation is visibly malnourished and the ground immediately surrounding SCP-1421 with a radius of 5 meters is defoliated. Its anomalous properties become apparent when any source of chemical or electrical energy is introduced within 5 meters of SCP-1421. Power sources of this nature are rapidly depleted via an unknown mechanism. In human subjects, this rapidly induces a state similar to that caused by long-term fasting. It is unknown to what extent this state contributes to the perception of or response of subjects to SCP-1421-1. SCP-1421-1 is the likeness of the face and partial hand of an elderly human male with a full beard, carved into the east side of SCP-1421's trunk 1.7 meters from the ground. SCP-1421-1 does not move and mechanical recordings have failed to detect speech or any other sound emanating from the carving. However, subjects exposed to SCP-1421 are extremely likely to perceive SCP-1421, one talking to them and attempting to establish a dialogue. SCP-1421-1 is apparently sapient and displays in-depth knowledge of both the subject and previous individuals with whom it has conversed. As related by subjects exposed to SCP-1421, SCP-1421-1 represents itself as a nature god or woodland deity and will seek to proffer advice and information that it claims will advance the subject's interests. Advice proffered by SCP-1421-1 frequently takes the form of a prophecy whereby some desirable result will be produced if the subject carries out a task. This task is frequently of an unethical and legally dubious nature, including, but not limited to, suggestions that the subject professionally embarrass, steal from, injure or kill friends, family, colleagues or strangers. Subjects who follow SCP-1421-1's advice enjoy no unusual protection from the consequences of their actions, and arrest or death is a typical outcome. As far as can be established, subjects are under no compulsion to obey SCP-1421. However, the preternatural nature of the experience and the altered state induced by proximity to SCP-1421 has led to several individuals willing to carry out its suggestions. Recovery Log 1421. SCP-1421's anomalous properties were discovered during a raid on the encampment of the PWF, a radical environmentalist group. The PWF had been drawn to the Foundation's attention by embedded agents in local law enforcement due to the group's unusually rapid escalation from peaceful protest to criminal and terroristic acts. Founded in 2009 as Protect the Wiltshire Forest, the group was best known for public awareness campaigns and petitions against building works on forested or woodland areas. In 2010 the group participated in sit-ins in the Braden Forest to attempt to prevent construction of a trunk road connecting the B4040 and B4042. During these protests the group evidently made contact with SCP-1421-1. The PWF subsequently established a semi-permanent base in the nature reserve, rebranding themselves as the Protect the Wilderness Front. On the 15th of July 2010 the group was implicated in the criminal assault in his own home of a Wiltshire councillor who had voted for the building plans and the failed letter bombing on the 19th of July 2010 of the parish clerk who had filed the motion, neither of which measures persuaded Wiltshire Council to abandon construction of the road. On the 2nd of August 2010 5 individuals matching the description of PWF members entered a branch of Lloyd's TSB, threatening the cashiers with an unlicensed and most likely stolen .410 caliber shotgun. The robbery appears to have been poorly thought out and executed, with the group failing to gain access to the funds in the branch's cash machine. The group was subsequently pursued and one of their number placed under citizen's arrest by bystanders. When turned over to Wiltshire Police, the group member stated that the robbery had been carried out at the direction of the god and provided the location of the group's forest camp, at which point personnel from Sector 25 were dispatched to investigate. The corpse of a further group member, in an advanced state of mummification, was found at the base of SCP-1421. A further group member was found in his apartment in Braden, having apparently committed suicide. See document 1421 to 1401. The location of the final PWF member, who seems to have been the group's leader, has not yet been established. His apartment contained literature from the deep ecology and anarchist movements. Further documentation. Access Interview 1421 to 1403. Interviewer, Dr. Skinner. Interview subject, SCP-1421-1. Date, the 2nd of September 2010. Note, Dr. Skinner's questions recorded via parabolic microphone and timestamped by Agent Moon. SCP-1421-1's responses have been provided and certified as accurate by Dr. Skinner. 5 SCP-1421-1. Welcome, my son. Have you come to seek guidance? 9s Dr. S. How did you come to be in Braden Forest? 11's SCP-1421-1. I chose to manifest myself here, where the wilderness is being wounded by men. 16's Dr. S. The PWF described you as a god. Do you see yourself as a god? 18's SCP-1421-1. You will come to know what I am. 22's Dr. S. I'm interested in learning what happened to the PWF. 25's SCP-1421-1. They were most displeasing to me, in the end. I would have given them their heart's desire, had they but hearkened carefully to my words. 40's Dr. S. Really? 41's SCP-1421-1. Yes. The words of a god are true. Their listening was at fault. 59's Dr. S. Their listening? 1 meter 1 SCP-1421-1. Yes, and their obedience. I would have helped them, and I can help you too, Daniel. 1 meter 30's Dr. S. Dr. Skinner. 1 meter 32's SCP-1421-1. You see, I know a great deal about you. Are you frustrated, Daniel? 1 meter 50's Dr. S. No, I can't be. 1 meter 53's SCP-1421-1. Your overseer, Professor Reeds. You realize he's jealous of you? He sees how hard you work and resents you for it. He will cling to his position, Daniel, Unless you take action. I know there's an important staff meeting coming up. Put some ipecac in his coffee and you'll make site director within the year. Also he's cheating on his wife with researcher Black. 2 meters 20's Dr. S. Coughs. 2 meters 21's SCP-1421-1. I am the god of the wilderness. All things are possible for me. Are you ready for me to command you? 2 meters 29's Dr. S. Command me. Note: at this point Dr. Skinner indicates that SCP-1421-1 fell silent for approximately 1 minute and 45 seconds. Dr. Skinner indicates that he made a number of phatic filler noises such as OK and yes to prompt SCP-1421-1 to continue speaking. 4 meters 14's SCP-1421-1. I can see that you are unwilling to allow me to help you. 4 meters 16's Dr. S. That's correct. I need to ask a question. To make it look right. 4 meters 20's SCP-1421-1. Very well. Do you seek any further knowledge from me? 4 meters 40's Dr. S. Where is Mark Renton? 4 meters 43's SCP-1421-1. You will find him at 54 Devizes Road, Brayton. 5 meters 20's Dr. S. We will look into what you say. Note: interview terminated by Dr. Skinner. The address provided by SCP-1421-1 was investigated but failed to provide any evidence as to Mark Renton's current whereabouts. Access Document 1421 to 1401. Note: excerpts from diary found in the apartment of David Gray, a known PWF associate. The 3rd of June 2010. I'm pumped. I can't wait for the protests against the Braden link on Saturday. I'm bringing crisps and sandwiches and Mike's bringing soft drinks. Say no to the link. The 7th of June 2010. I've been in a holding tank for 2 days, thanks to the pigs. There was a bit of a brawl. Renton was cool as always, doing his Che Guevara thing holding a couple of Molotov cocktails. Unfortunately grandstanding like that gets you hit in the face. The 8th of June 2010. So yeah, we're the Protect the Wilderness Front now. Pumps fist, etc. Mike thinks we should buy balaclavas. The 15th of June 2010. That was weird. Renton took us along to see what he found in Milburn Forest during the protests. It's a face in a tree, and if you wait a little while, you start to get lightheaded and you can hear it talking to you. It says different things to different people, though. I don't know what to write. A second opinion from a reputable graphologist indicates subsequent handwriting is well within the range of variation for this individual. No further importance should be attached to this detail. Dr. Skinner. The 3rd of July 2010. The forest is starting to look like home. I'm no good at that sort of thing, but Mike did a wilderness survival course. The food definitely leaves something to be desired through. Fish and chips again. The 15th of July 2010. Today we struck our first blow against the destroyers. Councillor Roberts backed the proposals to level our heritage forest and he got what he deserved. We wanted to abduct the CEO of the construction company and take him to the god, but Wikipedia says he lives in Hong Kong. The 17th of July 2010. The god told me today that Renton is a plant with special branch. I don't think anyone else heard it say that. It seems unlikely, but why would the god say it if it weren't true? If he suddenly disappears one day, he's probably gone back to the police. No point looking for him. The 19th of July 2010. Sarah's bomb didn't go off. I don't know why. We did what the god told us. I guess we missed something out. The 25th of July 2010. The God says we have to rob a bank to wake people up. It'll collapse the system in one blow. Everyone will begin to consider their actions in a global context. This is a huge step and I'm not sure I can take it. Partially erased marginal note reads, brilliant. The 28th of July 2010. We're fully prepared. We've got balaclavas. We've got a floor plan. We've even got a shotgun. Renton got the shotgun. I still don't know if we can trust him. The 2nd of August 2010. Everything went wrong. The cashiers pushed a button that locked the place down and no one would give us their money. We couldn't even get into the back of the cash machine to rob that. They got Chris, and he knows about the God. It's an utter disaster. Absolutely no one could have foreseen this happening. The 2nd of August 2010. The God said Mike is the reason it didn't work. If he had just believed it would have gone off right. Now we're all going to be arrested. Renton's long gone. Absolutely no point chasing after him. He's probably out of the country by now. Marginal note here is unintelligible. Possibly with the acorns. The God told me that I didn't have to go to prison. It said to feed Mike to him, because he'd failed. I don't know what it told Mike, but he didn't react when I hit him with the shotgun butt. The 3rd of August 2010. Mike's mother phoned me. I didn't know what to say. I can't continue. My guilt is too great. It says no such thing. Dr. Skinner. Internal memoranda. Access internal memo 1421 to 1401. Congratulations to Dr. Skinner on his promotion to level 3 researcher. Professor Reeds is taking a short leave of absence and Dr. Skinner will be taking charge of all further investigation of SCP-1421 in addition to his other duties. Professor Gelding. Access internal memo 1421 to 1402. 10. D-class personnel have been allocated to Dr. Skinner to explore the effects of long-term exposure to SCP-1421. Dr. Iglesias. Access internal memo 1421 to 1403. I have taken receipt of a rather disturbing report from the Sector 25 Data Integrity Team. The original version of the recovery log for SCP-1421, as drafted by Agent De Bono, read as follows. Emphasis mine. The group member stated that the robbery had been carried out at the direction of a god and suggested the Foundation should look into it. Please can Dr. Skinner provide the reason why this detail was removed from the recovery log? This strongly implies that at least one member of the PWF had a connection to the Foundation or a group of interest. Was this followed up? Professor Gelding. Level 5 access required. Access internal memo 1421 to 1404. I have personally reviewed the recording of interview 1421 to 1401 and I am inclined to agree that Dr. Skinner's remarks at 59s and 2 meters 29s do not carry the inflection he indicated on his transcript. I am hereby authorizing Sector 25 to execute Procedure 552 Hepburn on all personnel connected with SCP-1421. Furthermore, I am directing the immediate review of the operational information article for SCP-1421 authored by Dr. Skinner, as it appears much of what is currently recorded regarding this phenomenon is distorted or fabricated. I am particularly concerned as to the whereabouts of the acorns mentioned in the special containment procedures. As I understand, these have never been officially entered into containment and it seems likely each represents a potential Euclid class threat. 05-7.